Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. In this video, I want to talk about vocal production, and I specifically want to relate it to some software called Revoice Pro. Quick disclaimer here, this video is not a paid sponsored video. However, I will be doing a paid sponsor video for Revoice, so I do have that kind of relationship, and I want you to know that. But that's a win-win for me because I really love this software, and I'm going to get paid to show it off. So cool, awesome. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I do a lot of things. I do a lot of mixing, I do a lot of recording, but the thing that I have the most accolades for is vocal production. Vocal production is the taking responsibility for the sound of the vocal on record. So that means helping the performance along, picking out the vocal recording chain to fit the vocalist the best for the record, and then of course also taking care of the editing. So in this video, what I want to do is play down some singing that I think is not horrible but mediocre, and then kind of pointing out what I'm listening for as a vocal producer, and then also showing how I'm correcting it in post. Now, a lot of these things I would normally correct as much as possible in the actual recording process, but sometimes we don't always have that luxury, particularly when we're working with somebody who is not really necessarily the greatest vocalist in the world. In this particular case, me. Yep, you're getting subjected to my singing voice. I'm so sorry. But let's listen to this verse down, and then I'm going to point out the things that I listen to and listen for, and hopefully that will give you the toolkit to do the same when you're in tracking sessions and trying to get the best out of a vocalist. All right, here we go.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late, but these dreams I've had a few aren't real enough. I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last, even though that isn't fair for both of us.
So that's completely raw, untreated, just the way it sounded as I tracked it. Tracking chain was this microphone right here into an Avalon M5 preamp, nothing else on the way in, and no tune, no EQ, no nothing. I think a high pass filter. So what am I listening for? Okay, there's a number of things that I listen for. The first is tone. Tone is typically a choice that's originally made at the onset of figuring out how things are going to sound. In this particular case, I'm using a warmer, kind of rounder tone, or as round as my voice is going to get, and I have a bit of gravel in my voice. I think that it works. It's fine. It's not something I can get rid of anyway. This is a strong choice, in my opinion, both because of the sound of the piano, which is kind of soft and inviting, and also because my natural voice is very brassy. It's very easy for me to get into this sound, and that would sound horrible on this record. So I'm listening to tone, and tone is usually a very distinct choice. Good thing, we're sticking with that. We don't need to worry about that. The next thing is going to be timing. I spend a lot of time listening to timing because pocket and rhythm is so important. Now, my timing in this is generally not bad, except at the very beginning where I rush. And that is very typical. When people get excited and they try to get into their entrance and pull that excitement into the entrance, a lot of people tend to rush. I definitely fall into that camp. So listen to where the downbeat of the piano lands and where my vocal lands relative to that, right in the very beginning.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late, but these dreams I've had a few.
So might sounds like it's almost a 30-second note early, but dreams sounds like it's spot on. So I kind of correct my timing as I go. That's definitely something that can be fixed very transparently in the vocal editing phase, and it happens. So we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, the next thing is going to be pitch and intonation. What's the difference between pitch and intonation? Pitch is the actual center of the frequency that you are hitting. If something is off pitch, it's going to be flat or sharp. If something's on pitch, it's going to be there. The intonation is the articulation of the pitch. It's not whether or not you're hitting the pitch, it's how well you're working that pitch exactly. So my pitch, there's a couple spots where I'm just straight off not on pitch. There's more spots, though, where the intonation is not as good, and that tends to be the thing that's a little trickier to fix in pitch correction, and something that you really do need to look out for. So I'm going to play this down, and we're going to listen for pitch, but we're also going to listen for intonation.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late, but these dreams I've had a few aren't real enough.
So there's a few words that are a little troubling here. The vibrato on B seems to drift a little out. I can't remember the words. The word late is definitely like the tail. The intonation falters and I kind of shake away from the note going flat, which is pretty common for the end of phrases. It's a habit that's hard to break. And then the word aren't that comes in a little bit later, you hear like some pretty heavy drift.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late.
So like B, it kind of goes B, like there's a little bit of drift in the middle of it. It goes by quick, so it's hard to catch, but you just kind of feel like the pitch isn't wrong, but there's something wrong about it. And it's the same thing with late. It feels good until the very, very end where it kind of feels like I just sort of stopped caring.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late, but these dreams I've had a few aren't
right. That note, it's not technically the wrong note. It just doesn't feel like I'm really hitting it quite right. And that continues on. We'll actually hear some notes that are like really distinctly off. This actually right in the very beginning, this is a little bit off as well, but it's not like crazy off. We hear a little bit more off pitchness and pitchiness going through the second half here.
I started bringing up the past.
Right, there's already a lot of problems in that. Bringing the intonation's bad. I started is literally not the correct notes. Well, it's the correct notes, but it's not on pitch. And then it's going to get worse from there.
I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last.
So past, the intonation's not great. It's in the right place, but it kind of drifts to the wrong, like it kind of glisses down, but not in the right way. How is off pitch just a little bit. It's slightly flat.
How the things you love don't last.
And then last feels really lazy. The intonation on that is terrible. The slides in general across this are pretty bad. So that's definitely something where I would try to get better takes in the tracking phase. And if I couldn't, I would definitely be looking to correct them in terms of the actual pitch side. So aside from those technical things, the timing, the pitch, the intonation, there's also something bigger than that, which is the conviction, the believability. And for me, that's actually the most important thing, because timing and pitch you can fix, and Revoice is amazing with those things. The one thing you can never really fix is the believability. That's the X factor. So when I hear my own voice here, this is kind of where I draw the line between, like, as good as I'm going to get, I'm not tapping into that X factor here. I don't think that there will ever be like a greatness where my voice is currently. Maybe I could practice it and find it, but it just ain't here right now. I don't think that it's unbelievable. I don't think that it's bad. I think that I'm doing fine for a karaoke performance. But would I consider this viable for like a pop song that's going to sway the universe, you know, win the hearts and minds of the children? I don't think so. But the beautiful thing about editing is that sometimes when you have a really believable performance, the technical stuff kind of falters. I worked with one vocalist who would become so emotionally enwrapped in her performance, she would actually start to cry. And I mean, some of her music was really sad and very, very personal and heartfelt. And so the performances were super believable because she was really reliving her moments. And that was amazing. Like it was so powerful. But at the same time, it's really hard to sing through tears. So the beauty of pitch correction is that while it's true that pitch and editing correction can be used to fictionalize a voice and make it less believable, if you're thoughtful about it, it can do the opposite. It can allow you to take the most believable takes and then fix the things that would otherwise take you out of the moment. Now, where you have to use your discretion as a vocal producer is saying, you know, where do you want to embrace the perfect imperfections? Sometimes when something's flat or just out, it makes it more believable and convincing. Sometimes when something's flat or out, it disrupts you from the moment and it makes it less believable and less convincing. So you have to really just weigh that against your own subjective tastes, and there's no other way around it. So now what I want to do is I want to play the corrected version here, and this is going to address a lot of those issues with timing, pitch, intonation, and hopefully preserve the believability.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late, but these dreams I've had a few aren't real enough. I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last, even though that isn't fair for both of us.
So there's a couple of things that I want to point out. The first is that once everything is kind of in alignment with the pitch really nicely, there's a presence and forwardness that shows up that just makes the vocal feel a little bit bigger and brighter, even though it technically hasn't gotten bigger or brighter. It's just aligning with the record in a way that feels more connected, feels stronger, feels more like it belongs. So just as a general vibe, it's improved tremendously. The timing I shifted in the very beginning, so that first line kind of gets squished a little, but not in a bad way necessarily. It makes up for a little bit of that pocket that isn't really quite right.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late.
Before.
Now this might be a mistake that I...
One more time.
Now this might be a mistake.
You really hear it on B, actually. B feels really rushed.
Now this might be a mistake.
And our after.
Now this might be a mistake that I'm calling you this late.
Super subtle, still has a kind of forward sound, forward driving approach, which I think is fine because it kind of counterbalances with the piano, but definitely a lot cleaner. I want to jump over here to some of the intonation stuff, which we get a little bit later on in you know, dramatic sense. Let's go with this couple of lines.
I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last.
So listen to I started and past really carefully, and the word last as well. Those are really like the pain points, I think, for the performance in the raw version. So started, I started, is off pitch. Past falls off of the note too quickly, and last feels really drifty.
I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last.
Last, right? That doesn't sound good. Now listen to it in the corrected version.
I started bringing up the past, how the things you love don't last.
Way better, especially on last. Last, right? You hear the two distinct notes and the glide between them, and that comes from being able to work manual pitch correction, which is what I do in Revoice. So overall, just generally better. And then I tightened up these harmonies. I think the harmony line is actually really good, even in the raw performance.
Even though that isn't fair.
Right? That's actually pretty good. The even is a little off, but the actual line, even though that isn't fair, right? That's pretty good.
Even though that isn't fair.
But I wanted to see if I could tighten it up more and make it kind of like that pop tightness to see if I could get that from Revoice, and I can.
Even though that isn't fair for both of us.
It's pretty satisfying to listen to. Of course, that pop tightness also comes from the fact that the initial performance was still pretty good, so I could get it there. Okay, so from here, I want to jump in and actually go through some of this process rather than just talking about it and some of the considerations. So we're going to hop on over to verse 2, and I'm going to start banging out some actual pitch and edit and timing correction here. All right. So for all of those reasons, I think I'm switching officially from Melodyne to Revoice as my primary vocal editing DAW. One sponsorship won, one sponsorship murdered in one sentence.